all men will hate you because of me, but not a hair of your head will perish. By standing firm, you will gain life. By standing strong. By standing firm. By not quitting. By not giving up. By enduring, by persevering, you will gain life. We have a word of the day today, believe it or not. Our word of the day is penultimate. So, we'll learn the word together. I say it, you say it. Penultimate.
Penultimate.
There's always one. I say it, you say it. Penultimate.
Penultimate.
Okay, good. Now, we know what ultimate means. That means the end, the final, the very last one. Penultimate means the one right before the end, the final, the very last one. If you are keeping track on your liturgical calendar, as I know you all are, this is actually the penultimate Sunday of the church year. Oh yes, you better believe it. Next Sunday is Christ the King Sunday. It is the conclusion of our liturgical year. It is the culmination of the gospel story. Everything that we have read and heard and learned throughout the entire year comes to its fruition and completion on next Sunday's celebration of Christ the King. And the very Sunday after that, guess what? It's December. And we start all over again on Advent 1. We are that close to Christmas, believe it or not. So this Sunday is the penultimate Sunday, not the ultimate Sunday, not the last one, not the final one, that's next week. It's the one before the last. And if you think that's not worth keeping track of, I think our readings today give us reasons why it is. Reasons of endurance. Reasons of perseverance. Reasons that say, don't quit, don't stop, don't give up, stand strong, stand firm. Well, why the penultimate? Would that be this particular message? In each of our readings, we have a penultimate connection, and I think they're pushing in that same direction. And it's a little bit like running a race. If you've ever ran a race before, if you've ever run with a sprint or endurance or speed or slow or whatever, and now you go around and around and around. When you hit the home stretch and you can see the finish line, that's like the ultimate at the end, the conclusion and the finish. It's very encouraging. And I don't care how tired you are, but you hit that final straightaway and you get this extra kick and this final burst. It's like, the finish line, woo, I can do it, all the way through. You know? You get that, I see it, it's right in front of me, I'm going to give everything. That's great. But that's not today. Today is the penultimate. So this is more like rounding that final turn. And that might be the worst time of a race. Because you're tired. And you're worn out. And you're beaten up. And your body is screaming out to please, for goodness sake, stop. And you're sucking wind. Just trying to push through. And you have no finish line in front of you. You know it's coming. You know it's going to happen soon. But you can't see it yet. So you have to push through sometimes a blind curve at the worst and most fatigued part of the race before you get the sight of the finish line. Before you can see that encouragement of, oh, there it is, and my final kick and everything else. No, you just have to take the worst part of it, and you're just going to have to turn and hope and trust. You can make it around that curve. You can hit the final straightaway. You can get to the home stretch, and boom, make it to the end. That's what this Sunday is. And within the race of life, that is where most of us find ourselves. In the penultimate phase. Not the ultimate, at least I hope not. Few of us reside on our deathbeds this morning. More of us, however, know that the end approaches at some point, whether relatively far or relatively short. No one knows the day or hour, but we're in that stage where we can't quite see a finish line. We know it's approaching, and we're probably tired, and we're probably worn out, and we're probably a little bit beaten up. Here in this calendar year, for goodness sakes, I will be glad when it's 2014. I'm tired this year. I am sick and tired of 2013. I'll press the point just a little more, as you've heard me say over the last few weeks. It's been a hard year. It has been a hard year. And we are not quite to the end. And all the fun and all the excitement of New Year's and Christmas and everything else, we don't even have that yet. We are in the blind curve, where we know it's coming, but we can't see it. We can't be encouraged by seeing the finish line. We just have to push through and go make it around the curve before we can see the straightaway and before we know we will reach home. And it's hard. And it's tiring. And many of us are very worn out. Sucking wind. Fatigued. Beaten up. And here, on this penultimate Sunday of the church year, in the penultimate month of the calendar year, in the penultimate phase of our mortal lives, stand strong. Stand firm. Don't quit. Don't give up. Persevere. Endure. By standing firm, you will gain life. As we look back to our first reading, this one's real straightforward at how penultimate it is. It happens to be the penultimate chapter of the entire book of Isaiah. See, it's fun. We're reading from Isaiah 65. Isaiah has 66 chapters, so this one's real easy. It is the penultimate chapter of Isaiah. And the Lord has something to speak to His people through Isaiah, but not at the very end. This is not the full conclusion of this lifelong ministry. It's right before you get to the end. So what does the Lord want to speak through Isaiah right before you get to the end? It is a beatific vision. It is a glimpse of God's eternal glory and His roadmap for the finish line. We can't see it yet because we're still on that blind curve. We are not yet in the home stretch where we can see the presence of God face to face, eye to eye, and cross the line. So we are told the finish line is coming. And this is what it looks like. Behold, a new heaven and a new earth. Wolf and a lamb will feed together. Mortal enemies will reside in peace. There will be no more harm or destruction. No more crying. No more tears. No more death. A new heaven, a new earth, a new Jerusalem, and God's people in His eternal joy. We're rounding the blind curve and we can't see it, so we're told that it's there. And we're told what it is. So keep going. Push through. Don't quit. Our second reading, you have to be a little creative, but I think that's okay. To call this a penultimate reading, if you look at 2 Thessalonians, okay, you got me. It is the last chapter, so you can't say it's the penultimate chapter. I mean, there's only 3 of them, so you cut me some slack. But let's just say, if you look at the page, there's actually a paragraph to go within 2 Thessalonians after this. There is a final benediction and blessing within 2 Thessalonians. If you move backwards one paragraph, you get our reading today. So it's not the ultimate conclusion of 2 Thessalonians, benediction, blessing, peace. It's what happens right before the benediction, blessing, and peace. The penultimate thought, if you will, the penultimate paragraph of 2 Thessalonians It's sort of summing things up. It's kind of filling in the corners. It's kind of dotting I's, crossing T's, tying up loose ends so that the conclusion can be beautiful, joyous, and complete. But right now it's all this sort of scattered stuff about this is what you need to be doing. And it's super practical, and it's real straightforward. Stop whining, stop moaning, stop complaining. Get to work. Don't stop. Don't quit. Hey, busybodies, settle down. That's my favorite one. Settle down. Never grow tired of doing what is right. This is going to be hard. And you're going to want to give up. You're going to get tired of it and sick of it. You get frustrated. Frustrated with doing what's right, and frustrated with others who won't do it either. But don't stop. Don't quit. You're rounding a blind corner, but you're nearing the finish line. Don't stop now. And there within our gospel, a little more creativity, but I think it still makes sense. There are a few more chapters in Luke to go, but everything after this moment, starting with chapter 22, will be the conclusion of the life and ministry of Christ through Holy Week and Easter. Everything after this is an upper room, is a Last Supper, is a betrayal, a trial, a crucifixion, and a resurrection. So this, in essence, is the last teaching and preaching of the kingdom that Jesus will do until he demonstrates the kingdom through what he does. So this is sort of the penultimate thought within Luke's gospel, because these are the last things that Jesus is teaching before he will show the kingdom of God through the sacrifice and resurrection of his own life. You follow? And what is he telling us? He is not telling us that we'll be puppies and roses and sunshine. He is telling us that there are hardships and there are difficulties and there is suffering. It's encouraging at the end because we are gaining life. The Spirit will give us what we need. But doesn't all of this presuppose that bad things are going to happen? Tough times will occur. This is the sort of reading that I think is aided in our understanding by considering words from the philosophers. So I quote from a philosopher now, that thinker of the late 20th century, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, who said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And they asked him, what do you mean by that? He says, well, everybody's got a plan until they get hit. Mike Tyson, in his prime, was a bad, bad man, right? I mean, he was knocking people out in the first round and devastating them. And he's saying that everybody's got a plan to beat me. And I hear that before every fight. Well, this fighter, he's got this ability, and this fighter, he's got this technique. And they all lay out this game plan of how they're going to take down big bad Mike Tyson. And it all makes perfect sense. And it all sounds really good on paper. And they've practiced and they've trained and they've got this strategy. And then boom, I hit him in the mouth and it's all out the window. And isn't that what Jesus is telling us? You're going to get hit in the mouth. Life will hit you square in the face. Now what do you do? And interestingly enough, as he details some of these horrible things that are going to happen, kingdom against kingdom, great earthquakes, famines, pestilence, suffering, persecution, prison, death. Some of you might get dragged in front of the authorities where you will have to give an answer to your faith. What are you going to do? And if you note, he doesn't say come up with a plan ahead of time. Okay, I know. Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Oh, okay, let me get it. Oh, that's a really great Bible verse. I need to make sure that I say that one. Yeah. Oh, and this point. That's clever. This will get him. He says, you're going to get punched in the mouth. That plan might as well go right out the window. But fear not. For the Spirit will speak through you if you will let Him. The Spirit will provide for you what you will need. He's telling us the truth. And it's a hard one. Life is hard. It's scary and difficult and painful, and there is suffering and there is tragedy. But we won't make it through because of our plans. They can sound great on paper, look real good, but we're going to get punched in the mouth, and those plans are going to go right out the window. His good news to us is that it won't be about our plan, it will be about His plan. For the Lord has a plan for us. And He can accomplish it in us and through us. And it's not about how clever we're going to be, how much we have prepared, the technical knowledge that we have accumulated, that when the suffering occurs, if you'll count on Him and depend on Him and trust on Him, He has a plan, and that plan will not fail. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't mean the plan is to avoid the punch. But it does mean that His plan is true. And it is good. And it can and will see us around that blind corner, back into the straightaway, through the home stretch, to the finish line, and back home to Him forever and ever and ever, where there is no crying and no more tears, where even the enemies rest together in His peace, where there is a new heaven and a new earth, and even death itself has met its end. It's not easy, but it's true. It is His plan. And God's plans will not and cannot fail. I had the opportunity last week to spend the afternoon with Cliff Timber. Most of you know about Cliff's condition and the terrible pain in his back. It is degenerative, probably permanent. His condition is probably terminal. He's okay when he's lying flat, but as soon as he tries to sit or stand up, he's on the clock. It's usually minutes before he is in terrible and excruciating pain. He's had a lot of time to lay flat on his back, and he's become very introspective, very thoughtful, very philosophical, even very reflective about his life. And here's a man lying in bed, watching his own body waste away, facing terrible and crippling pain, having lost his wife, not being geographically close to his children, getting rid of his car, selling his house, systematically letting go of everything that he has had and known in this life, understanding that the call to hospice is coming soon, and the conclusion of his mortal life is about to be at its end. Here's a man in his ultimate phase of life, on the final straightaway, the home stretch. You know what he talks about? Gratitude. Thankfulness. He's full of praise. As he's had all this time to lay on his back and consider his plight and his pain, to know that even the treatments they've been giving him have been attacking his body and only giving him more discomfort, he comes back time and time again to how grateful he is for how much God has blessed him. How thankful he is for how good God has been to him. He was thanking me for us. How grateful he is for his church family here. He's in tears. You can embarrass him for a second and talk about how he will weep when he thinks about the goodness of God and the blessings that he has in considering how much he is loved by this church. And here's a man who has every right, every expectation, and on paper, to be the most miserable man you know. And instead, he is filled with thanks. In essence, he is the living illustration of our scripture readings today. And for we who are still on the blind curve, trying to push through, make it through, get past that curve and turn and make it into that home stretch before we collapse and fall, here is someone who approaches the finish line, who can start to see that beatific vision of the glory of God and his eternal presence and love. And he is filled not with regret, not with anger, not with sadness, not with grief. He is filled with thankfulness and praise. And we in the penultimate phase of our lives have something to learn from that and something to take from that. Give him a call. You stop by and see him at Highlands Lake yourself. It'll be a blessing to him, I know. But it will be an encouragement to you, I promise. Well, here's a man who approaches the finish line and knows that God's plan is good, that God's plan is true, and that God has brought him past the curve, down the straightaway, and will lead him through the finish line and back home to him forever. So stand strong. Stand firm. Don't give up. Don't quit. Persevere. Endure. I know it's been a rough year. I know it personally. We're in the penultimate month of this miserable year. In the penultimate phase of our own mortal lives. Hear from our readings today in this penultimate Sunday. And consider our friend and brother Cliff and his message of what it means to be ready to cross the finish line and win. Despite the difficulties, despite our best laid plans, God does have a plan. Even when we get punched in the mouth. We might get knocked down, but by the grace of God, we are not knocked out. So stand firm. Stand strong. Endure. Persevere. God's plan will not and cannot fail. When we trust in him, he will bring us through the blind curve, down the straightaway, past the finish line, always to him. By his grace, stand firm, and you will gain eternal life.